David Bridel, welcome to the LYHL Podcast. It's such a privilege to have you here. I'm very, very excited to sit down with you. I know you through your business, Clown School, and this is a pivot in my life as somebody. This is not on my academic journey where I thought,
Mhm.
after grad school and fellowship training and things like that, that I would be in my mid 40s, signing up and paying somebody to teach me about clowning. And for me, I even had to learn that that you could clown, that it's a verb, that there's a gerund, you can be clowning. I didn't, so there was a whole new world, and I only did clown one, so my knowledge is still very small, but the experience with you and the experience I know with others, because that led me to you, was really uh, has opened up something in me that I'm still like uncovering and unpacking. And I feel a lot of gratitude for the work that you do. So thanks for joining the podcast today.
Well, thank you for having me, Al. It's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, I was very excited that we met under those circumstances that you just described. And it's a pleasure to join you.
Well, great. Well, the first question, David, is how would you describe your work and vocation?
That is such a simple and innocuous sounding question, and
That's
I
right.
feel that the answer could just go on forever. So
Uh-huh.
you already said it. I run the Clown School, which is here in Los Angeles, and it's both a business and a passion of mine. Um, and the mission of the school is to teach people about clowning, mostly from a practical standpoint, although there are little hints of academic inquiry along the way, depending on the medium with which you study with me. Um, but clowning is an ancient topic, but it remains ever contemporary. It's an embodied experience, so you kind of have to be there to do it. And obviously, it relates to questions and invitations towards humor, silliness, nonsense, and play. But it's also a very deep and wide open subject that asks questions about how we live our lives and what changes we might want to consider making if we wish to expand in new directions. And I've uh, today and for the last several years, I have uh, I've lobbied for the practice of clowning to be available to all, not just to performers or circus
Mhm.
artists or even comedians or actors, but rather a kind of an open church that welcomes people from all corners and wearing all stripes. That's important to me because I think it's a personal journey as well as a artistic practice at one and the same time.
Whew. Okay. Okay.
Well, you did
There,
ask.
I I know, and but you covered so much ground in such a short space, short amount of times. You didn't use very many words there. You just kind of went right in that. Um, I'm just trying to decide where to go with what you said. I think the thing that I'd like to talk about next is the embodiment
Mm,
because um and I think this is where when you show up for clown school, I for sure didn't I for sure knew I didn't know what I was getting myself into, right? I knew that. And I mean, you very much as somebody who has been an educator for a decade and a half to see how you facilitate like this arc within a session. Our classes were 3.5 hours, I think,
that's right.
weekly, and 7 or 8 weeks, so over essentially 2 months. And I don't think I've ever done something so embodied. And there was vocalization, there was uh it seemed to be an attempt to move as many parts, all parts of your body as possible while making I don't want to tell like secrets, but
No, no,
uh,
sure. Blab away by all means.
while making noise, while vocalizing, um, and while and then there was this whole, which is a whole experience, right?
Mhm.
There were certain things we did that it was even like, oh, this is okay, we're breathing. You can think of practices where we take breathing, or, oh, we're tapping. Oh, we're just doing okay. And the embodiment and then the link that we were bringing other people into our experience, that was
Mm.
always there. There was such a eye contact component. So I don't have a question there unless there's anything that you want to say right now about embodiment, but that just feels so vital. I think the one thing that I tr started out saying and I didn't land on was you can't help but be changed when you do something so embodied. So I didn't know what I was going to get into, but I also didn't know that I was going to have this fully embodied practice. And that's very intense
Right.
to do a very embodied practice for 3.5 hours. I found myself very exhausted just in general after it. And that next day was like oh, this is not life as usual. If I was like I'm gonna be productive, I'm gonna sit down and do da 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 or meet with this person. It was no, my body, there was that embodiment was still happening. Um, how important is embodiment to clowning?
Well, I think it's integral. Yeah, it's the two things that are as one in many respects. I do feel that some of the things you refer to uh, all circle a particular topic for me, and that topic is playfulness and what it means to engage your body, your system. I was going to say your body,
Mhm.
but really your whole system in the practice of play. And one of the many entry points to that question involves releasing and letting go of energies that might be trapped in the body under normal circumstances. The great thing about clowning is that it does that in a way that is both connected to others, so you're not experiencing it privately, and also is so playful that you're not really obligated to achieve anything in particular. Like there are certain outcomes in clowning, but they're not the ones that you might expect. So, therefore, the release and the surrender to embodied practice may not feel as strict as you might encounter in other kinds of embodied practices, but the system is getting a really good, kind of clean out, and therefore, I think what you suggested about what happens the next day is
It's
very valid.
like
Um, but I do think, among other things, I feel that clowning is a pathway to vitality. And when you do get fully in touch with vitality, that has to be a physical experience. It's not intellectual or cerebral in any way. And so the body has to be completely engaged. Although I should say, and I hope this was part of your experience too, that you don't need any particular skills in order to practice this version of embodiment.
Mhm.
You do not need to be an athlete. You do not need to be a dancer. You do not need
Mm.
to be a mindful practitioner. You do not need to be any of the above. You do need commitment and you do need courage, but those are a different kind of human
Mhm.
qualities. So, yeah, embodiment is everything, and it's a joy, and it leaves you feeling different.
Amen to that. How did you get into clowning? Like, what would you like to share about that backstory of your path to
Sure.
this? Yeah.
Yeah, I left college and went to a festival with some peers of mine in France. I was at college in the United Kingdom. And there we encountered a kind of a form of theater that on our little island we hadn't really spent a lot of time engaging with. The general title for this theatrical sort of lineage that we entered into was physical theater, although that term is suitably criticized by some. But I guess to go back to our previous phrase, we could call it embodied theater rather than intellectual theater. Um, and consequently, as a result of kind of dipping my toes in the stream, I ended up through a series of recommendations in the classroom of a teacher who then and now is regarded as probably one of the greatest authorities on clowning. His name is Philippe Gaulier. He's a Frenchman who has, I think, round about this point, reached the end of his career, actually. He's quite senior in age. But he ran a very, very influential clowning school for a solid 35 years. And so I happened to enter into and pass through that school. Um, and it was very, very influential to me. I found myself both fascinated by him as a teacher and his teaching style, which is quite provocative and has been criticized by many, I think, for good reason. But also the material, the content of the class, which was to enter into clowning, not so much from the perspective of circus clowning, which was my only reference point at the time, but rather from the perspective of its value as a kind of uh, a practice that contained philosophical elements, theatrical elements, performative elements, and also just plain human challenges. Um, and from that, I grew a fascination that has never left me, and eventually, prompted me to found the clown school in Los Angeles many years later. So Philippe is still regarded by some as the sort of eminence grise of clowning and the great maestro, and also regarded by some as a unnecessarily provocative and old-fashioned pedagogue, and everything in between. But he's certainly been a huge figure in this world, and yeah, I was lucky to spend some time in his studio.
So you were a theater student preceding, and then this
Correct.
became more of a, oh, this is my direction, my subset, my.
Yeah, that's right. It's a kind of a pathway. Although I maintained a healthy presence in what you might describe as more mainstream theater, I continue to do that kind of work.
Mhm,
But clowning as a subset became a really genuine passion point and has only become more of a passion point as time has passed and the school has been founded and grown. And as you know, my own way of walking through life has kind of engaged me in a lot of questions around this exact subject. And I found that clowning is a gift that keeps on giving,
mhm,
and I never feel like I've reached the end of the road. So
mhm. Well, I have so many questions that I'm like, well, I just want to just ask you about my experience in clown school, all like the questions that I had, because it was so much of uh, it was like show up and give your all. Um, of course, paid for this experience and was giving this time and rearranging my schedule and all these things. And, um, but there was such an offering in it and there was such a frustration and
mhm.
a growth within it. And,
Tell me about the
um,
frustration part. What are you referring to when you use that word?
yeah, well, I wonder, I don't know how much you remember participants, and their,
Yes, sure. Yeah.
yeah, if you can picture me. Um, I think that I think I witnessed everybody get frustrated. So I know this wasn't like
Yes,
an
that's perfectly
insular
normal.
insular experience to me. But I would say part of like the struggle that emerged for me, and it wouldn't have been surprising, that if you said, "Oh, you're going to struggle with this," I'd probably be like, "Oh yeah, yep."
Mm,
But what
mm,
emerged for me, it was a frustration of really like wanting to do it right.
mm,
Um, and I spend a lot of energy in my life that's like, do you think of, if I could recall the words they use, we talk about clowning as a cleanse and this embodiment. There's so
mm,
many things, yeah, just in my body that had been pointed in that direction of do it right, whether it was my academic studies, my upbringing, familial upbringing, religious.
mm,
I think there's even that just being a woman in society, that there's expectations that aren't, uh, there's different expectations put on men, but I think there's more
mm,
freedoms that men experience. So I think that was a big frustration for me. And then the part of how because yeah, it was very interesting to watch you just as I was a participant, but I'm an observer and also just like,
mm,
aware of how you're facilitating and gleaning things from that. And there was just we never stayed in one place, right? So there
mm,
was there was patterns, and so that gave us certain level of comfort that started to give us room to move into literally, I'm moving my arms
mm.
right now. If somebody's not watching on YouTube, that's what I'm doing. Naturally, that was, I'm like thinking about what we did. So naturally, that as you knew a little bit more, there was enough of like, what metaphor would I want to use? I don't want to use something that was restraining because it doesn't feel right, but I let out my leash probably a little bit. Like there's probably like that as we get enough of a structure, familiarity, like you had a week over week, there was kind of the rhythm of the welcome
Mm,
and this is what we're doing. And well, it was so embodied that you actually speak very little, which was very
mm,
interesting in terms of you just modeled a lot of things and
mhm.
everybody just shows up and is kind of doing it and we're just like, okay, I think this is what we're doing and we're doing it. And then as soon as you start and then that repeats a little bit, but then things change the guidance that's provided to us and kind of like our goals kind of change and that would lead into frustration. So there would be like there was always a leveling up
Mhm.
of what we were doing. And as soon as you got to a place where you're like, okay, I think, yes, I've got it, then,
Mhm.
and you're probably, I would imagine too, that you're just reading the room and depending, that you have like a template of how things go, but you probably, I am imagining, are adapting to, because I saw you interact with each individual person differently and myself included. But yeah, the frustration was a lot of just trying to do it right.
Yes, it makes perfect sense. And of course, it's a common theme, in so many ways. I feel that clowning is a counterpoint to conditioning. Now, you and I and everyone else in the room aren't carrying the exact same conditioning narrative with
Mhm.
us. There are probably some crossovers somewhere along the line, but yours is yours and mine is mine. And one of the beauties of clowning is it manages to be elastic enough that it sort of adapts to your conditioning and tries to tease, coax, invite, or challenge you out of it, whatever it may be, religious, cultural, familial, intellectual, and so on. Um, and I think it's worth saying that clowning is intentionally oppositional. I don't use that
Mhm.
term to mean antagonistic, although it can occasionally be experienced that way. But oppositional means in this context, it is designed to reverse many elements of what keeps us, should we say, safe through expectation. So if I expect, for example, that what I do well will be offered an opportunity to flourish, then clowning might remove that rug from under your feet. if I expect that my instructor is going to provide me with a lot of information, which I can then process academically, then clowning will remove that rug from under your feet. And these are just microscopic examples. But
Mhm.
the adaptation that you refer to is my effort to try to see a person for wherever they might be limited by their conditioning and then offer them alternatives through a variety of means, sometimes through teasing, sometimes through simple suggestion, and
Mhm.
sometimes through a sort of intentional confusion. Um, you mentioned, as you were describing your experience, the question, "Is this what I'm supposed to be doing?" Which I think is kind of an essential
Um,
part of the experience. It made me think that Samuel Beckett once said of his play Waiting for Godot that he was attempting to, and I quote, give confusion a shape. And I like that mantra because, in a way, that's what clowning is trying to do as well. That there's a lot of clowning in that play. So, yeah, having your version of what it would mean to get it right, and then encountering a ecosystem in which that's going to be challenged, and perhaps your approach to that subject might be expanded or even reversed. That's a big part of the experience.
Part of what, and I think, well, sorry, there's a lot of internal things coming, lots of false starts coming out. I apologize.
Okay, no
Um,
worries.
I'm curious about many things, but what's the one thing I'm going to land on? Uh, Something that felt different about you. Yeah, maybe something I haven't really encountered before is definitely not in like a facilitating environment, but maybe just like universally globally. Obviously it was we had a setup, I was a
Yeah.
participant, it was um, you seemed very unbothered. Do you know what I mean when I say that, or do you want me
I
to say
think
more?
so.
Okay, yeah.
No,
Well,
I think I
let's go with that.
understand.
Yeah. When you say is that you, or is that a growth process because of clowning?
It's a little of both, I think. And I feel that it's only fair and appropriate to begin my response to that observation by saying yes, and there are certainly times
Yeah.
when I get bothered. I may not reveal it very much. I've always been a diplomat in that respect. But certainly times where I get bothered. And actually, I think that my own practice as a teacher or an instructor, facilitator, hits various road bumps along the way. That would be natural. And there are times when the approach, behavior, or even the values that a student brings into our relationship uh, provoke me in ways that, I don't always know how to handle. So what you witnessed is true, and at the same time is not the whole story. So it's just helpful, I think, to say that up front. But yes, to your question, part of it's innate, just temperamental, and familial. For me, it's just a kind of a condition of equanimity, at least in professional context. And then
Mhm.
part of it is indeed an element of the practice itself, because I do my best to give people, notwithstanding all the provocations that I might come up with in any given session, trying to do my best to give people enough space to conduct their own experiments, not only the experiments that I might think are necessary for them. And that involves saying a little bit less and
Mhm.
trying to reserve any tendency I might have towards sort of heavy judgment, just in case there's something that a person has to learn by doing whatever comes up for them. I
Mhm.
can try and contextualize it and give it a name and help them to move forward from there. But I think if I was agitated, more frequently, then it would be an indication of my desire to control things.
Hmm.
And while that does come up for me,
Hmm.
um, I do my best to keep it at bay, you know,
Yeah.
imperfectly.
Yeah. I mean, I think what I observed in the dynamic of the I'm gonna say classroom, just because that's what's accessible to me. The
Mm.
in that classroom setting was it was like it was controlled chaos, but it never felt in your un in labeling it unbothered, it was yeah, you were very in control of what was happening, and I've never witnessed somebody bring like chaos into such a redirect with an unbothered presence, right? With like, it was never like, okay, we're done, and now next. It was just, um, yeah, it was very, and I guess I haven't articulated it, and that's why some of I'm like in my head trying to land on. Oh, it was just very it was amazing. It was impressive to facilitate with um so few words that brought such a range of um experience like that release and then kind of this bringing back in. So
You're making me think about, in recent years, there's been a lot of attention paid to this idea of flow,
mhm.
creative flow or work flow or all different kinds of flow. And I do think it's a really valuable concept, and I actually intentionally attempt to practice that inside of the studio, seeking ways in which either an exercise or an experience or an inquiry can flow um, from one thing to the next, either inside of an individual or collectively as part of a community. Um, and I'm reminded once again of the idea of giving confusion a shape. The shape part is really important.
Mhm,
If you have just
mhm.
confusion with no shape, then it's just a
Yeah,
mess.
yeah, yeah.
So
Yep, that would be
shape
an
is,
example of it. Mhm.
yeah. So it's critical to try to balance those two things. And sometimes that's just part of the 10,000 hours, right, of spending
Yeah.
time again and again and making a bunch of mistakes. And even to this day, I will have regular experiences where I will say or do something inside of a moment in the studio, and I will think to myself, "Ah, that just, even in a tiny way, that just
Hmm.
countered the natural flow of the room." So I'm
Hmm.
always trying to work on that.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, and of course, it's part of the clown practice,
Hmm.
surrendering to impulses and trying to avoid outcome-based thinking and acting and behaving. Does get us in touch with a different version of our energy, uh, the way our energy emanates. And I think that flow is a really useful word in that respect
Mm.
to try to understand it. So,
Yeah, that it feels very appropriate. It was a very flowing experience, and
mhm.
yeah, and you are a master at it. It's just very impressive to witness and to be a part of. So thank you for that experience. Yeah, I'm like tempted to just like I want to like linger in here and keep where I just get to ask these questions that I um to satisfy or try to satisfy these curiosities that I have, but explore them
Yeah.
nonetheless. There was one other thing. What? Speaking of flow, this is not good flow.
We only know
uh,
something because of its opposite. So
the
there you go.
opposite. Yeah, yeah. So what here, because here it is, and that helped me kind of bring it back. So the work that I do like life is an energy exchange, right? Between humans, between other living beings, elements in the world. It's an energy exchange, and uh, the work that I do, I have to recover from. And I shared about my experience with the clown school, and I'm imagining, and that's me. Of course, there's 14 other participants, and
Right.
so I was managing my interactions with them too, but I also wasn't responsible for them in the way. Do you find to facilitate that kind of embodiment, are you needing, is there a rhythm where you have to balance that out in your schedule with?
Yes, I think there is. I notice that more and more actually as time
Mhm,
passes, and I discover that it helps, especially the exit strategy. Entering into the studio doesn't feel
mhm,
like much needs to
mhm,
transpire other than hopefully I'm awake and switched on. But exiting the studio often requires a little more intention on my part. And I don't have a sort of a special practice around this. I just have an awareness that I might need a little more sleep. I might need to clear my head with a walk the next morning, or I might need to just remind myself to pay close attention to the actual environment that I'm in and not get kind of stuck in my memory of what just happened. So yes, like everyone, I think trying to kind of cross the threshold into the workspace and then uncross the threshold as you come out
mhm,
of the workspace is a going concern, and I'm increasingly aware of that. And if I guess I can say one other thing about it, which is that if it's true inside of the studio, that what I'm asking people to do, among other things, is to pay close attention to their lived experience, well, then it would be productive of me to, take my own medicine
mhm,
outside of the studio. Which and well, like everyone, I have my days. Some days I get stuck, I get snagged on
mhm,
something, and other days I'm really able to let it go.
mhm, mhm. Well, thank you for the work you do. I really hope you get to continue to do it for a long time and impact a lot more lives.
I hope so. That's my intention anyway. So
Yeah, yeah. Maybe I'll make it back for that clown too.
who knows?
Who knows? We don't know. Uh, David, what is it? What do you think it means to live your healthiest life?
I was looking at your questions, in advance
Mm.
of this session and thinking to myself, good God, how on earth does one answer that? Um, but I'll give it a shot. And I can say that, I'm only speaking to this based on the information I have at my disposal now. And who knows, that could change. And certainly, I'm speaking to you based on a lifetime that has included lots of dead ends and you know uh, and mistakes. Right now, I think that finding the joy in everyday life is an enormously important part of being healthy. So, um, in fact, I think it might be the central element of being healthy. That
Mhm,
is to say, one could describe it as a positive attitude or looking on the bright side or gratitude practice and all of the above. I, and I think it is all of those things. I also have another word to help
mhm,
describe the experience that I'm referring to, and that is wonder.
mhm,
I like the word wonder because it
mhm,
implies both a condition and it's a sort of a verb of curiosity. Trying to do a lot of wondering um, is something that I have become increasingly aware of. And it helps to have kids who are also engaged in a lot of wondering. Their
mhm,
learning becomes my learning, their questions become my questions. So that's a hugely important central part of our family life. But yeah, I think health is predicated on curiosity. It's predicated on the awareness of the small miracles of life, regardless
mhm,
of what you think about the bigger ones. And doing my best to keep it real when it comes to what's actually happening. There's no spiritual bypasses here, but nevertheless, keeping the focus on, I was going to say productivity. That's not quite the right word. The the journey towards appreciation is a better way of saying it.
Mm, hmm hmm Oh, yeah, that, so finding joy, wonder, curiosity, miracles. Those are some great words right there. Um,
I thought you were going to
it,
say those are some big words right there.
those are big ones. That is that what you want me to say? Well, we'll just
No, I don't
rewind
know.
and edit it. Those are wow. How do you spell those? I wonder. Well, all those words have a special place in my life. Joy, miracle, curiosity, wonder. Wonder, yeah, makes me think of awe. Like
Hmm.
there's to me a component of slowing down required in order to have wonder. Um, I think about, and I don't know, am I how wondering do I get? But I'm using an example of like commuting to work,
Hmm.
or it doesn't have to be work. It could be an errand. It could be
Hmm.
if I drive there, it's a very different experience than if I bike there, which is a
Hmm.
different experience than if I skateboard there. It's a different experience than if I walk there, and different experience than if I walk with the dog. So I gave way more examples than I thought I was going to start out with. I was just going to use the biking one, but because when I bike, I feel so much more connected to my neighborhood, to the people I'm looking for eye contact when I'm on the
Yeah.
bike, partly for safety.
Yeah,
You
sure.
know,
That's
like
right.
are these people seeing me? But there's so much more of an invitation for a connection. But if I slow down, I'm trying to think, do I? And I think I will have moments of wonder where, because maybe I notice the breeze more or the sunshine. I'm in the elements. Maybe I notice cloud formations more, or if it's precipitating or on the verge or any of that. There's again that sensory experience. There's also smell. If it's rained recently, I'm gonna notice that, which isn't going to happen if I'm in my car and it has the
Hmm.
filter on and it's not
Hmm.
allowing those things through. Um, what do you relate to that idea of like slowing down for wonder? What do you think? How do how do we wonder?
Well, I have a few thoughts about that, but the first thing that I noticed when you entered into that description of alternatives, when you might be running an errand, you gave about at least four, I think, four different alternatives, is that that's part of the beauty of seeking out this kind of experience. It may not be that any one version of traveling to the drugstore is the most wondrous version. It may be that availing yourself of different alternatives at different times keeps your life from stagnating around,
Mhm.
single choices. Um, going back to our previous conversation, I think that a lot of the work that I do surrounds a concept that I like to call personal dogma. That is to say, the way that we think about ourselves can often kind of, what's the right word, encrust over time, and we become more and more the person that we think that we are. And of course, there are advantages to that, but there are limitations too, as with everything. So, what I liked about your story was that I thought to myself, oh, well, Monday is walking day, and Tuesday is biking, and Wednesday is the dog, and Thursday, and the following week you switch the days and you switch the thing. Cars, the consistency, the sort of,
Mhm.
everlasting drag of always having to get into your car is much documented as a real challenge. But every now and again, I like to blast my favorite 80s pop tune, roll down the
Mhm.
windows, and it
Mhm.
feels like a holiday.
Mhm.
So, So that was one thought that I had as I was
Hmm.
listening to
Hmm.
what you described. Variety is the spice of life kind of approach.
Hmm.
Um, then separately, I was thinking there's a very brilliant academic improvisation specialist and senior care expert by the name of Anne Basting, who comes, I think, but last I knew was based at the University of Wisconsin. And I was sitting in a lecture that she gave once where she described the basic human needs as including the ones that I recognize, food and shelter and whatever. And she said also wonder or awe, to use your word. That's a basic human need she proposed to us. And then she said, and three of the most uh, time-honored access points for wonder are spirituality, nature, and the arts. And then she qualified the arts by saying, really, inquiry, inquiry of all kinds. Um, so I like going for those kinds of walks or taking those kinds of bike rides because of proximity to nature. And in fact, you happen to describe the feeling of, the smell and the texture of what happens after it rains. Being in touch with that is so essential. Somehow, even if it's on a microscopic level, just noticing flowers is a big deal in my life. My
Hmm.
dad used to be an avid gardener. And he was a wonderful gardener. And wherever we lived, he would always build the most beautiful garden. He'd spend hours out there. And I could not have found it to be more boring as a child. I was just excruciatingly bored by gardens and the whole idea. And now that I'm in my mid 50s, I feel like that the circle has completed because I just love gardens. And I love horticulture and I love flowers. I'm no good I don't have a skill like he did, but I have an appreciation now. So nature is one. Spirituality obviously is a big personal question for everybody. And yes, artistic practice or simply inquiry. For example, I've noticed in recent years that my daughter's predilection for cooking has really sort of helped to open up my own interests, which were lying there somewhat dormant. And that's become a great area of satisfaction because, like so many of these other things we're talking about, you can get very present when you're making a meal. So I I think it's, how to keep your relationship with the everyday um, in a condition of creative aliveness. That's health to me. Um, and I should certainly exercise more, and I should certainly visit the doctor more often, and etc. I think I'm a pretty regular person when it comes to the official definition of health.
Yeah.
Uh, but at the local level, I'm just trying to get excited by what's in front of me.
Hmm. Hmm. Um, I love that. I'm gonna have to go back and re-listen to you said keep relationship with something something and then the creative aliveness. That
Yeah.
um I really appreciate your poetic use of words and your uh I don't know if it is a searching, but it like a finding, a gathering of words that um invite newness of
Mm.
I think for the receiver, for
Hmm.
me to hear that it's like, okay, we're talking about the same thing and we're using different language. Um,
Mm. I like that too.
the creative aliveness. Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like to say any more might just take away from what you've what you shared, they would just put like my fingerprint all over it. But I do relate to the gardening thing, although I can get really there some of my wiring is to help me navigate the world. I think I believe very strongly in my experience, and then I will frequently universalize it
Oh, sure.
and I not quite aware when I should release that and when I should because sometimes it's something that's a capacity that I have that's good, and I think, oh, everybody can do this, and then
Right.
it's only been in time that I've realized, oh no, that's kind of like a gift or superpower. So if you expect other people to have that, but so that relates to the gardening in that because I enjoy it now, I feel like that's kind of my experience because I don't have a very marked like, oh, I hated it as a kid, and
Mm.
now
All
and
right.
now I love it arc. I'm just like these flowers are amazing and my entry point in that really made me wonder and I was writing about it even this morning was is just flowers like when I'm up in the trail system in the Angeles forest and I like to just spend a lot of time in there and I'll uh, trail run which at times is kind of looks a lot like walking up a hill.
Mm, sure.
It gets like steep enough, but I'll find just flowers that are, and I have to document them because they're so amazing. So I stop and I get my phone out and I'm photographing it, and then there's no scale for it. And part of the wonder is like that this particular group of flower, the individual bloom is um,
Wow. Oh,
smaller than my
yes.
fingernail.
Yeah.
And it just really like, and here it is, and the fact that it's just there, it's like how many blooms have gone by and nobody's ever seen it, or, has
Mm.
a bee even met them all? Like, it just really puts me in a place of, yeah, just wonder to
Yeah.
see. And all I can say is, tiny white flower, tiny purple, I might not
Right.
know.
Right.
But then over time, I try to learn like at least the names that we've given them.
Hmm.
So I relate to that, at least middle age interest in plants. And I'm like, and
So true.
this is one of my newest ones. I rescued
Oh,
it.
hello.
It got scorched in the heat and they had it
Oh, sure.
half price. So sorry again for the podcast. And if you're not watching on YouTube, I'm pointing at and I bought it not even knowing what it was. Do you recognize it?
No, I
They'll
don't. I
put it
can't
because
see
it's
it.
a bird of paradise
Oh,
but
it
I didn't
is?
know because obviously with the flower we would know, but I never paid enough attention to the um and so whenever I can, I'm like trying to bring the outside inside to be as close to it as I can. So
Yeah.
I don't even know. I just can't get enough plants and I wish I was better at taking care of them. Some look like I'm amazing, but we've just hit the right, it's by the right window and it meshes well with the amount of watering that I give it, but I'm not particularly adaptive to if things start to go south. Maybe you said you're not too good at it. Maybe you can relate to that.
Oh, certainly. Yeah. My wife has the green thumb, but not me. Just speaking of birds of paradise, we were walking, my family and I were walking, I think it was only yesterday, recently. And there were some giant, what looked to me like palm trees, that just kind of attracted our attention. Actually, we were speaking about how an insurance company would probably insist that those particular trees would be, stripped or removed because they were hanging right over a house. And then at a certain point, we realized, wait a minute, those are birds of paradise. They were absolutely gigantic. And in fact, I came away thinking they look more like dinosaurs than
Yeah, I was
trees
gonna
because
say that's a prehistoric.
yeah, genuinely prehistoric and really quite startling. So that was a moment of wonder right there.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
bearing
yeah.
witness to that was incredible.
And you're like, and they better get that insurance company out there.
That's right, exactly.
Um, what are you currently learning about living your healthiest life?
Well, I think much of what we've talked about is current in a
Yeah,
way. And
yeah.
one other thing is coming up for me, which is, um, you know, none of us are free from the burden of difficult moments, difficult thoughts, difficult processing. And a huge shift has occurred for me in recent years regarding where to put that stuff. So, and how to try to navigate it in ways that are healthy because, it's all well and good to talk about the kind of the beautiful side of healthiness, but we're not perfect and we're going to encounter uh, challenges. So, to just try to capture it in the simplest way possible and without being too ultra specific, having a community of from 1 to 100, it doesn't really matter on the number, where it's possible to do the difficult processing, to work out, talk out, hypothesize over the challenging moments in life before actually engaging in actions that would be responses or possibly reactions to those difficult moments. That's become a big deal recently for me, and I feel very much like like a learner, uh, as opposed to my life as an instructor. I feel very much like a new learner when it comes to knowing how to handle, those kind of challenges. And uh, but it's even in a short space of time, a few years, it's made a big difference to living a healthy life.
I'm gonna try to mirror back what I heard to
Mm,
see if I'm understanding. So you're learning that the hard things in life, that it's important to do it in community is probably the
mm,
shortest way that I would
mm.
say what I heard.
Yeah, but I think a specific community, or a well-chosen and I don't want to say insular, that's not the right word, but a kind of a protected
A
environment in
safe, yeah.
which,
Hmm.
yeah, in which all parties are fully agreed that they are going to be sort of co-participants in one another's processing, and that space is invaluable as a tool to utilize before taking any action that those difficulties might have brought up.
Hmm.
Because I think, like everyone else, I've been a very reactive person much of my life. I just think, and I'm not very well trained in dealing with emotions, and trying to figure out ways in which that reactivity is sort of quieted and new systems are applied to help one arrive at a kind of a healthy decision, a healthy action, a healthy behavior. Yeah, it's amazing how
Hmm.
in the middle of my life that there's so much to learn about that.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I feel that a lot. Is there a circumstance or situation that you could like put some flesh and bone to like
Mm,
what you're
mm,
describing?
mm.
The um
Yeah, I'll
the
give an
per
example as it relates to a challenge that came up in the workplace where I happened to encounter an individual who presented me with a problem or a challenge that I didn't like. Um, and in the past, I always imagined that I was the most reasonable person on the planet. And when confronted by things that expressed agitation and concern, whatever it was I said or did in response to that would be the right thing. That was just the way I thought that I operated in the world. And then through a painful series of lessons, I learned that I was completely misguided in that assumption. In fact, deluded would be a more accurate word. And therefore, the example that you're looking for, somebody expressed their agitation around something that was going on in the workplace. And instead of responding immediately with all the wisdom at my disposal, I simply took the problem to my community, talked it out, heard some reactions, got some insights, received some challenges that didn't feel as though they were personal. Well, that's a peculiar way of putting it, but that felt productive rather than, agitating. Was able to mull the whole situation over, and then on the other side of that, return to the source and offer up a response. which by the time I got to that response was far more, um, what should we say, helpful than it would have been if I had immediately done it all by myself. So that's what I'm learning at
Mm,
this point in my
mhm,
life is
mhm,
okay, something comes up, what people refer to as a red flag. Uh, let's take it. Let's take it somewhere. Let's give it some time. Don't feel like you have to reply immediately, whether it's an email or in dialogue. Learn the skill of saying, I'll get back to you about that.
mhm,
And actually being at peace with not knowing where it's going to go and how I should be and behave and what I should think. Because if you are anything like me, those red flags immediately cause a firing up of responses. Like, oh, well, I could say this, and that would solve the problem immediately, and I would also be right. And
mhm,
yeah, as I mentioned, usually I'm not right. I'm typically wrong about all of that stuff. So that community is an invaluable part of the whole, life processing that comes up in
mhm,
challenging moments.
mhm, mhm. Thank you for sharing that. That um, I I'm trying to relate that to myself, and that feels like it feels a bit like a moving target, I would
Mm,
say. Because sometimes those communities are stable in our life, like to go to, and
mm,
at other times, there's kind of seismic shifts in our life that can make having that kind of go-to community a little bit less resourced. So I'm feeling a little bit of that, and I'm feeling a bit of
yeah.
the what you're what you're saying, what I'm hearing you say anyway. Sorry, what I'm hearing you say is that uh, our community is a resource, and we have to uh, we have options in terms of how we interact with them, and to uh, we might neglect them. And maybe does this relate? We might let me finish this, and I'll try to jump
Mm,
to a next thought. Uh, that if we neglect like the opportunity that our community presents, or opportunities that we're not living life as who what's the adjective I'm going to use as
mm,
or adverb, as fully or as kind of capably as we
mm.
could, healthily, I guess. If
Yeah, I actually like the word capably. I think that's wonderful. I mean, uh, I'm sure we've all had the experience of just going it alone, whether that's
Mhm,
for 6 months, 6 years, or 60 years. We've learned, we learn through experience that we we rely on ourselves a lot.
mhm,
And I think this area is one where I have found that I have grown enormously and
mhm,
also accessed a totally different version of humility by understanding that I actually can't and shouldn't go it alone because I'm not very good at it all by myself.
mhm,
Or there's definitely some blind spots at the very least,
mhm,
to put it minimally.
mhm,
Um, yeah. So, and I understand, as you said, that
mhm,
whatever that community consists of for you and for me, it's going to be different. Um, it's not necessarily going to stick around forever. You have to put some
mhm,
attention towards
mhm,
it.
mhm,
Um, and I also don't think it's as easy as saying, oh, well, it's just my best friend. I mean, maybe for some, yes, but maybe for
mhm,
others, it can be really tricky if you take your
mhm,
problems to your best friend because they might get involved. So
mhm,
you have to navigate how you can introduce and nurture objectivity in your life because you need it just as much as your friends and enemies need it from you.
mhm.
You need it for yourself.
I could tell you a thing or two. I like that. Yeah. I got some things for my enemies.
Right.
Um, okay, I liked that nurture objectivity. So I did want to link back. This is with a thought that jumped into my head previously about you said you talked about personal dogma earlier.
Mm.
Is that is what you're describing learning, is that counteracting
Mm.
personal dogma, or is it something
Yeah,
different or
absolutely.
related?
No, I think it's the same thing. Exactly. You know, I mean, it's not really possible to be a human being without going through the world thinking, I'm right about this.
Hmm.
And although there are some topics about which there is definitively a right and a wrong, that is rarely the case when it comes to human interactions, social interactions, familial interactions. Um, but we still can't help but think that we're right. You know, it's just it's apparently it's part of the system. So being able to go to a place where people can healthfully help you to see beyond the thing that you're carrying around in your brain
Hmm.
is indeed a way to sort of address your own dogma.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's very deep and profound what you're saying. Like I've found that a lot of this resides in my body, like this need to be right, but it's only been through like I don't know, layers, clown school, like different things that I know
Layers of cloud school.
the well, to be honest, part of and I told you this when I gave feedback initially. I was like, I don't even know what to
Mm.
say. I know there's just so much here, and you, of course, unbothered. We're just like, it's okay, just And I was like, okay. But some of what's evolved since I think, we can what metaphor do we want to use? A key was turned to
Right. We
box
peeled
a
the
box
onion.
that we had and like yeah, is it an
Right.
onion peeling? What's our metaphor? But there's like a depth of and there's many factors in life. I'm leaning into life and growing and things like that.
Mm.
But I would say in the last even just 3 months is the sense of being able to name emotions in my body,
Mm.
and describe them. So, because an emotion is like a mental determine the language we have for them. If we say anger or
Mm.
fear, or that's a label that we've
Mm.
given to actually that something that is just in our body. And
Right.
I don't have anything handy, but I've started to chart things out. And I don't know if this is universal
Mm.
or if this is just my experience of it, but like I can say, and I think one of the things was the need to be right. And that's like, oh, you feel it by this rib, or oh, I feel it by this shoulder blade, or I feel
Oh, that's amazing. Huh.
yeah, and fear, like, oh, fear is this, and then it's cold, like my whole body goes like cold, and
Right.
shame is like this rounding in. I feel
Mm.
like that's the force that's happening. So that's what's happening for me is really like this unpacking. And there's a different, so the deepness I'm trying to say is because there's the cerebral understanding of how rigidity of thinking can limit you from uh, experiences in the world because it's not allowing for the dynamic interchange that wants to happen, right?
Mm.
Which, I mean, the pin in that is just like kind of like physics, like quantum physics and how we relate is that's
Absolutely.
kind of what's in my head of like that's wanting to happen. And so for us to be rigid is to be unnatural.
Mm.
And like that need to be right is is so I feel that once I feel thank you for saying that and I feel less alone, that you're saying like, oh, this need to be right and don't we all feel that way. And this call to nurture objectivity and community.
Mhm.
If somebody wanted to, um, if they were just like, I don't know that I have that community. And of course, this is all just your frame of reference, so we don't need to like
Yeah, yeah,
really
yeah.
hedge it too much. But just like, what do you think are steps for somebody that, for whatever reason, doesn't have that right now?
Mm.
and might be able to bridge them towards that because you did take time to say, um, this isn't just people, this isn't just community, this isn't just,
Right.
but if we're trying to find, and again, you use different language than me, my brain wants to say safe.
Hmm.
Um, and please tell me how you would label it. But are there any, again, remind me again, but are there any things you could offer somebody that wanted to?
Yeah, I do love the question. And from my own frame of reference, the answer is I'm not sure that I could offer anything of value to anybody else for two reasons. One is that each path is unique, and the other is that I'm being very intentional in not naming exactly what I'm referring to because that's a choice that I make, and therefore I wouldn't want to advise that upon anybody else. I do want to recognize, however, that for some, a therapeutic space would be just exactly what I've been describing,
Mm,
right? So, okay, a problem materializes,
hmm
develop the skill to take that problem, process it elsewhere, and finally return. But therapy costs money, and not everyone either has the resources or wishes to avail themselves of that for various reasons. So it makes it even more challenging figuring out, where is your processing space? But I guess all I can say is that, historically, by which I mean since time immemorial, there have been either institutions, people, or some crossover between the two, which sort of set themselves up as venues where we can go when we have struggle. I think one of the challenges of contemporary living, especially in urban environments and especially in, a first world country, is that we aren't integrally connected to those spaces anymore, not necessarily. You know, our lifestyles don't always cause us to naturally interface with places of succor, Succour, and places where we can mm, examine our struggles. So don't have an answer, but I do have a
hmm
question, and maybe that's enough.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Sidebar, I just wanted to mention something that, or respond to something that you said just a few minutes ago. Al, you talked about how lately you've been looking at how to uh, bear witness to emotions in your body. And I think you suggested that by doing that, you're able to sort of loosen the labeling that words naturally kind of create around some of those feelings. Fear is a word, anger is a word. They all have their own connotations, right? But if you're able to just set that aside and say, oh, my body is cold, or oh, I'm feeling a caving in, or
hmm
those examples that you gave, I just thought back to that phrase that we came upon earlier in our conversation, which was creative aliveness.
Mm.
I I would say from my chair that that when you do that, that when you examine and bear witness to yourself without the labeling or around the side of the labeling, and you take inventory of your body, then you're actually involved in a sort of a creatively alive practice
hmm
because it brings, I don't know if objectivity is too strong a word. I mean, feelings are feelings and they're powerful and strong, but it brings a kind of a strange poetry to the event of feeling things when you, at least in your report, I hear it that way,
hmm
um, which is different from just saying today I'm angry, that
Yeah.
which is valid, but
hmm
today I feel hot in my chest and I have
hmm
tension in my upper forearms. It's just kind of an amazing way of examining your experience.
hmm Yeah, yeah. Thank you for saying that. It's to me, it's a whole different language.
Mm.
And so and it's much more nuanced, yeah, than
Yeah, there you
the
go.
labels
It's
we give it.
exactly,
It's so
exactly.
it offers a lot more information
Hmm.
than, but the but it but I don't feel any problem with the label,
No,
but it feels like a deepening. It's more true to feel what's in my body than to stop. And they're related. And I land on the emotion before I can realize what my body's feeling. And it feels kind of like a mapping, like I'm saying, like, oh,
mm-hmm,
when this
mm-hmm.
happens. So it does really feel like it breeds curiosity. So the experience feels like it feels like I leveled up, like, oh, or but if I'm saying like head, it was like in my head, but now I'm in my
Right,
heart
right.
or in my body that I can. And you did use the word, I think, objective, and you were kind of
Mm.
not clear whether you wanted to use that word, but it is information. So
Mm.
so there is an objectivity. There's kind of strangely, by paying attention, it allows me to be more um like non practice non-attachment, I guess, like they
Yeah,
would
yeah,
say,
yeah.
like
That's right.
in Buddhism, that I can just say, oh, well, this is just happening, and it just is.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have to worry so much. Yeah, like you're saying, I don't have to worry so much about, yeah, and maybe I'm just saying the same thing that you were now, of like, I don't have to worry about those things, but it's crazy because I'm in my mid 40s, and to there's a push in my brain of like, whoa, I didn't even know that there's this level of experiencing human life that now
Right.
I'm accessing. And it feels like there's one thing you said where you're like, and I'm going to go through the day like this, or you said something like that. Oh, I'm angry today. And I think that happens, but I
Mm.
think a lot of times my sense, I don't know, I'm very new to this,
Mhm.
it seems like if I just notice it and get the information, it's actually going to move through me, and it's not going to
Mhm.
stay in there. And then I can just be
Mhm.
curious about, oh, well, this feeling is longing. This is longing. Okay,
Mm.
well, what are you? Oh, I'm feeling that. Oh, what what are you longing for? Um,
Mhm.
and then so it gives that information, like you're saying, that
Mm.
objective information, so I guess we're kind of uh, unintentionally, it seems like a pairing of what you're offering, of what you're learning right now, to bring yourself in community, and like how much our body, if we quiet
Mm.
ourselves, will give. That there can be that objectivity
Mhm.
in
Yeah, yeah,
both
yeah.
places. Yeah.
I agree. That's good. Hmm.
Well, I mean, again, thank you, Clown School, because other than that, what does that add up? Is around 25 hours of
Yeah,
embodied
that's about right.
intensity in 2 months. Um,
Yeah.
what is something that you wish people knew more about living their healthiest life? And it's fine if we end up looping back to something we've talked about,
Sure.
but yeah.
Well, yeah. Uh, well, I guess it does refer to something we talked about, but I'll put it in slightly more dramatic terms.
Ooh, okay.
Having being in a constant relationship with this subject myself, I think what I wish people knew more was that everyone is poised on a hair trigger of reactivity at pretty much every moment of their lives. Uh,
That's okay.
and
Yeah. I'm trying to write it down. Yeah.
and if we had that awareness, um, not everything activates us, of course. And much of what we've described, by the way, in terms of healthy practices, nature, and curating your environment, what have you, is all part of trying to create a non-activating environment in which you can access
Mhm.
peace and
Mhm.
quiet and serenity.
Mhm.
But that's not life, right? There's plenty of people, events,
Mm.
news
Mhm.
cycles, interactions where activation occurs. Um, And just knowing that when that moment comes up, you cannot help as a human being but be on the verge of reacting from a biased place. That's a really important knowledge. And I have to relearn that, almost, well, regularly, shall we say. And when I say from a biased place, I guess I'm referring to some of those things we talked about earlier. Whatever your conditioning or as your lived experience, your points of view, your opinions about what's right and wrong, your reactions are all coming from something that is uniquely you, but also uh, totally subjective.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
you know, even the most, you know, pieced out Yoda on the planet is still carrying around their own
Hmm.
personal version of reactivity. So
Hmm.
yeah, that's been a big one for me.
Hmm. Um, yeah, I appreciate that a lot. Just even like again, like a for myself personally, and just to the listeners as well. I I'm thinking of my recent experience. We'll say just months again. We'll give it kind of that range of
Mm.
um I love the home that I live in right now more than I've loved any other home. And, I've spent all this time to make it a sanctuary, and yesterday was even a day I just stayed I like don't even want to leave, when you make like
Mm. Lovely.
a home like that. And then I can go out just on the street, and all it takes, there's certain cars that are triggering for me.
Right.
There are but and there's certain things that are happening, all the crises, right? But there's certain things that it's so funny. So I'll back up again. So I'm at home and I'm just like, I've been thinking a lot about othering for a few years, at least that terminology of uh, that bias that we have to not love one another and not put other people's interests ahead, or casting blame on people or bullying or hate, whatever. There's so many things that fit under that othering allows people to do. And so I think about it, I'll create art about it, we need to love. And then I go out and then I'm just on the street. And this isn't just like, there's the normal traffic kind of stuff, but in my head, I'm just like, oh, I think it's one of those people, and like, I'm just like, because I'm looking at people like straight up, you know, really, really being harmed, right? Like their
Right.
livelihood, being unalive, like all these kind of things. And then I go, and I'm just like, people are driving crazy. People are so, and I'm just like, the world is falling. It just like this belief that I have that I go out and project into the world, which is a relearning because I've also gone through this process of just really like, wow, if I just meet somebody's eyes and stay
Mm.
there for a bit, I've gone through this process of like, wow, people like want to be seen. Not everybody, right? There's people that are gonna
Mhm.
hardcore like um avoid eye contact, but people just eye contact, a smile, like just again, this energy exchange. And then I can completely forget it and just be, yeah, like, and then it's just like intersection after intersection, just people being so aggressive. And I'm like, what the world? And I get caught like that trigger. And then there's some level of needing to integrate like caring and advocating for people that are
Mm.
really marginalized, that are being really harmed, and needing to feel strong enough emotions to take action, and then somehow still be on the street. And it's like yeah, if it's a video game, it's a next level of like trying to navigate how to do that. So I've been really surprised by my reactivity, and then even learning like, oh, I'm just going to change it a little bit. And then I remember to make eye contact, and you can even do that in a car, right? Like, with just like
Yeah,
a,
sure.
you know,
Yeah.
or you can give eye contact that's like, you know, right?
Yeah, give the stink
You're
eye.
like, yeah, like shooting darts. And then I'll just get whipped up into the, I knew they were like that versus like,
Mm,
oh, maybe they just gave back the energy
sure.
that I gave, and this doesn't have anything to do with people being harmed elsewhere,
Yeah.
or a society that needs to wake up. But that is, everyone is poised on a hair trigger of reactivity throughout their life.
And what you just said makes me want to frame it in another way by
Thank
saying
you.
that we're
Mhm.
we're all carrying our story around.
Mhm.
And, events that happen in the present moment, we just immediately absorb them into a past narrative and then respond accordingly. But this thing that you keep alluding to, which is you make actual contact with someone and you exchange an energy and then other things melt away, is, I think, a very strong reminder that our present is neither your past nor my past. It's
And
simply our present.
present, yeah.
And of course, if we lean into our past, we're going to find something to disagree about pretty soon. Um, and both be sure that we're right about it. So,
I
yeah,
know, I
yeah,
know, I know. I just found myself being nice to somebody on a run because he had a cane and he was struggling to carry a package. And this is somebody that when I go past, I like judge their house. I'm like, this person, I don't like them. And
mm,
then he was across the street helping somebody and struggling. I was like, I stopped, and then we had, and then he introduces himself, and oh, I see you. And it's just like, oh, and now I have to process having a nice interaction with him. I can't just keep like my nice tidy story. So, yeah, you're looking under the hood of things that I'm learning about just,
well,
uh,
me too,
yeah,
all the
yeah.
time. It's amazing how prevalent that part of our lives really is. Yeah. So, yeah, when you ask the question, what is it that you wish people knew? I think what I'm really telling you is what I wish I knew better and was
Hmm. Hmm.
able
Hmm.
to engage with more smoothly and easily. But
Hmm. Hmm.
that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and that too is common. They say, any sort of preacher or pastor, like whatever their thing is that they're like hammering about,
That's the
that's
very
the
thing
thing
they're
for
trying to
them.
learn.
Yeah,
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 exactly.
yeah. So
Yeah, it makes
that's
sense.
true for us all, I think. So
Yeah.
David Bridel, thank you for gracing a little clown playful sticking out of the tongue. Thanks for gracing the Lyle podcast with
Thank
your
you.
poetic, playful wisdom and caring, involved, yet unbothered presence. I really appreciate
Thanks for making
it.
such a warm and welcoming space for, a really wonderful conversation.
Oh, I appreciate it. These are my favorites. These are my favorites. To the Lyle listeners, may you always see the blessing. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Lyle Podcast. I'm so glad you're here. If you liked what you heard, you can find me on Instagram and YouTube at the Albatrell, as well as on my website, www.thealbatrell.com. Of course, you can find me back here at the next episode of the Lyle Podcast. There's numerous ways to support my work so I can keep helping you live your healthiest life. You can do this financially via links on my website or the show notes, by subscribing to the podcast and YouTube channels, by joining my newsletter community, aptly named the Lyle Newsletter, by rating the podcast, by sharing with others, those you meet, and participating in coaching sessions. It's my passion to help you live your healthiest life. I'm so glad you're here. I'd love to hear your thoughts about what you're learning and the insights you're gaining from these conversations. May you always see the blessing.